Piotr Zaremba is a lecturer on the Adam Mickiewicz University, Poznań, Poland, biblical scholar, translator of Hebrew and Greek Bible, and also author of the translation of the Old and New Testament, also lecturer at the Baptist Theological Seminary in Warsaw. We are very happy to have you here with us. Your presentation has a very mysterious title, To Hell with Hell. Okay, so
thank you.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, my presentation is entitled To Hell with Hell, Greek and Hebrew Hellish terminology and reflections on its translation. As an introduction, the Bible identifies various places where those who have completed their earthly existence move to dwell. Among these, hell, it is fire pit, appears to be the most intriguing. This is because behind the name of this place, hell, it is fire pit, there are several different Hebrew and Greek terms. Hell, therefore, can be regarded, at least to some extent, as a construct of translators. The construct, in this case, unjustified by the principles of translation. The topic is particularly significant because hell evokes strong emotions. It raises questions about the rightness of divine justice and places a question mark over the very nature of God's love. Moreover, with the ongoing process of secularization, hell as a place of eternal punishment has ceased to frighten people, if that was ever its intended purpose, and has in some measure become a burden to Christianity. What should be done with hell? It is fire pit. Perhaps, once again, the translators of the future Bible translations could help to find a way forward. And the important thing, it should be stressed that the Polish word piekło, if translated back to English, would not correspond to hell, but rather to fire pit. This is why in my paper that I'm going to present to you later, hell is addressed with an expression, hell, it as fire pit, because this is not the same. I start with etymology of hell, it is fire pit. Let me now continue with fire pit. Polish noun piekło, which is fire pit, is derived from the Old Polish pkieł, attested as early as 13th century, meaning tar. The origin of pkieł itself is traced to Greek pisa, Attic pita, and Latin pix, both meaning tar or pitch. The noun piekło is also linked to Old Czech, and Old Russian peklo, meaning heat, blaze, burning. In the Old Czech milieu, peklo, Polish piekło, made its dwelling place in the religious vocabulary of Christianity. From the 15th century onward, in that linguistic and cultural area, peklo denoted the abode of evil spirits and souls of the condemned people subject to torment in heated tar. Thus, hell, or fire pit, rightly evokes associations with posthumous suffering, tar, the heat of flames, and those who ended their earthly life in morally reprehensible condition according to the religious judgment. Now, interesting, it should be noted that hell, it is fire pit, in this sense, is not a legacy of pre-Christian Slavic religions. Logically, one might suppose, therefore, that the fire pit ought to have its origin in writings regarded as authoritative within the Christianity in which the term took root. So, where in those writings we can find mention of hell, which is fire pit, in the sense implied by the etymology to Polish noun piekło. Now, fire pit in the Hebrew Bible. Let's look at this. There are 7 nouns in the Hebrew Bible that describe the places where those who have completed their earthly existence moved to dwell. There is also additional expression associated with the noun afar, meaning dust. These nouns, first, listed in order of frequency are as follows: Mavet, Afar, Bor, Kever, Sheol, Shahat, and Abaddon. The expression related to Afar, that is dust, appears in Ecclesiastes 12:7, and the dust returns to earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. From that sentence, we can derive the place with God, Hammakom im Elohim. Now, conclusions from that. The meaning of these 7 words and the context in which they appear lead to 3 key conclusions. All of the 7 words listed are semantically related to Sheol, which functions as an abstract generalization of these more concrete designations. According to the Hebrew Bible, the places of the dead are essentially 2: Sheol for the material body, and Hamakom im Elohim for the spirit given by God. This conviction remained part of Israel's linguistic culture at the time of the composition of Ecclesiastes. None of the words listed above correspond in meaning to the Polish word piekło. Therefore, none can be translated as such without violating the principle of equivalence. That is, that a word in a source language should be rendered by a word in the target language that most closely corresponds to its semantic domain. Now let's go to the Septuagint. In the Septuagint, there are both books of the Hebrew Bible translated into Greek and 16 additional books or shorter literary units not found in the Hebrew Bible. Now, Hebrew words and their equivalents in the Septuagint look like in that table. Oh, sorry. And basically, they are translated the way you can see here. And Septuagint also have 2 more notions, noun tartaros and verb tartaro. The noun tartaros appears in 4th Maccabees 8:5 in the phrase Tartar and Hades are prepared for the tyrant. And the verb tartaro occurs in Proverbs 17:11 in the phrase, a disobedient man falls into calamities, and a merciless angel will cast him into Tartar. Both notions do not have a source word in Hebrew Bible. And also, the position of these two notions is not very strong because of the status of the books that you see here in you see references in the Septuagint. So because of this, I would say that basically conclusions one can draw from the Septuagint are similar to the conclusions that I read that are drawn from the Hebrew Bible, which means there is nothing in the Septuagint that would justify the translation of these words or rendering these words with Polish piekło. Now let's go to the extra-biblical tradition of the Second Temple Judaism. In this presentation, the extra-biblical tradition of the Second Temple Judaism refers primarily to Jewish thought that began to develop after the reform of Ezra in the mid-5th century BCE as an oral Torah, and was later preserved in writing in rabbinic literature of the 2nd century of Christian era. That is, in the Mishnah and in later works. But within the same tradition, it is reasonable to include other textual witnesses composed before Christ or written later, but preserving the thought of the 1st century of Christian era, which the writings of the New Testament were in a process, when the writings of the New Testament were in process of formation. The earliest of these witnesses is pseudo-epigraphical apocalyptic book, the first book of Enoch, dated variously, depending on its section, between the 3rd and the 1st century before Christ. Now, in short, the first book of Enoch introduced fire in connection with judgment. Pirkei Avot introduced Gehenna as a place of punishment in its 2 passages. Both fire and Gehenna got combined in the Jewish thought in Maccabean times or earlier. This is because, although Pirkei Avot is from the 2nd century AD, Christian era, it preserves the saying of Yosef ben Yohanan, Av Bet Din during Antioch Epiphanes IV. This is why this point 3rd. However, fire of Gehenna was not only destructive, but also refining. This is from Tosefta. Tosefta is even younger, but it builds on Mishnah and builds on earlier traditions. This is why I dared to mention it. And even I think, and I can kind of prove it, that in the writings of the Apostle Paul, there is the same idea that we find in Pirkei Avot. Gehenna was not eternal, but also temporary. Now, let's go to the New Testament. And again, in short, the places of abode for those who have completed their earthly existence are described in the writings of the New Testament with the same terms as in the Hebrew Bible and the Septuagint. In addition, though, to the terms found in the Hebrew Bible, the New Testament introduces 2 further expressions originating outside of the Hebrew Bible. The verb tartaro, known from the Septuagint, and the noun Gehenna. And the fire of Gehenna, Gehenna Pyros, from the extra-biblical traditions from which the word Gehenna derives. Now, can any word describing the abode of the deceased in the New Testament be translated with piekło without violating the principles of translation? As shown, it cannot be done for the words already examined in the Hebrew Bible and the Septuagint. But can it be done with a noun Gehinnom, translated into Greek as Gehenna? That is, can Gehenna rightly be rendered fire pit or piekło? This too cannot be done without violating the rules of translation. And here are my points. The noun Gehinnom is later term, originating in extra-biblical traditions of the Second Temple Judaism, not in the Hebrew Bible, where it functions only as toponym. For that matter, it is never translated with the word Gehenna in the Septuagint. As a term from extra-biblical Second Temple Judaism, Gehinnom denotes both eternal punishment, though not necessarily absolutely endless, and temporary punishment. The fire of Gehenna is not only destructive, but also purifying. My third point: within the Second Temple Jewish tradition, Gehinnom appears as a variable concept, not uniformly understood by the leading rabbinic schools in the turn of the era. And it crystallized theologically only in later centuries. The noun Gehinnom is a conceptual, not physical term. It denotes not a real, mappable location within the dimensions of the universe, but rather a logical category structuring the moral sphere, used to assign a place to those in rebellion against God. Sorry, I need to go back. Now, Jesus Christ is not the revealer of the nature of Gehinnom. In his teaching, he refers instead to the notions already in use and still being developed within Second Temple Judaism, at least since the Maccabean period. And my sixth point, even when Jesus Christ refers to Gehinnom as a place of eternal punishment, he does so in the context of his proclamation of the good news as a sole means of reconciliation with God, not as one of several alternative possibilities he offers. 7. Translating the noun Gehinnom with Greek Gehenna as a fire pit or piekło introduces, especially for confessional traditions that recognize as canonical only the writings of Hebrew Bible, the Septuagint, and the New Testament taken together or grouped in any form, introduces a concept that cannot be explained within their own linguistic framework. Hence, in explanations, Gehenna is often connected with the Valley of Hinnom, which is unjustified. And 8th point, translating Gehinnom with Greek Gehenna as piekło or fire pit in the later medieval meaning of that term is simply a historical anachronism. So, how to translate the noun Gehinnom, Greek Gehenna? The answer depends on the translation technique employed. In so-called literal translations, where there is also space for commentary or explanatory notes, it is appropriate to render the term as Gehenna or Gehenna. We would say Gehenna. The word Gehenna already exists in Polish as a loanword and is used as a common noun. Such translations create room for expressions like the Gehenna to Pyros or a Gehenna topir to asbeston that appear in Jewish and early Christian pseudepigrapha, thereby contributing to the better understanding of the cultural context of that period. In a literary, dynamic, idiomatic, or exegetical translation, depending on their intended purpose, one might translate Gehenna as place of punishment. Depending on the scope of material taken as a context, other renderings may include place of punishment, place of judgment, place of destruction, place of inner pain and suffering, or place of irretrievable loss. And what should be done to the word piekło, fire pit? I think that in the field of biblical translation, it should be abandoned. Or, poetically, as my title says, maybe we should send hell to hell. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Very interesting. It could be even more interesting in Polish because we understand all these small nuances of this word piekło. Okay,
Right.
We open the discussion. If somebody would like to say something or make a question. Okay, Marcin Majewski.
Moment. Okay, yes. You can see me and hear me, yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Piotr, for your presentation. Very, very interesting. You mentioned about Kohelet, so I would like to ask a question. I would like to ask a question. How do you understand this phrase from Kohelet, from Ecclesiastes, from 12:7,
Yeah.
about this afar and ruach? What do you mean about? You said that there are two places, Sheol and a place with God. I think we should understand this ruach. Maybe first I said how I understand it as not this. It doesn't mean a personal individual soul, but like in later theological sense, but rather something like, I don't know, life breath that comes from God, yes, or principle of life. This is for sure. This verse draw anthropology from the Genesis 2:7, yes, that humanity is created
Right.
from dust, and we have this God inspiration. God imparts breath, yeah. So how do you understand this?
Well, actually, this subject of piekło and the fact that piekło was made as a place by translators to be the place of eternal punishment. And now when I can see that this is just an empty notion, biblically speaking, then I started to think, what really happens when we end our earthly existence? And yeah, this Ecclesiastes 12:2 12:7 says things that, to be honest, I am in a process of meditating on, because if Jesus Christ was using these notions that were circulating in his times, then I wonder what he would tell me if I asked him, well, I'm not Jewish. Now tell me, what happens when we end this life? What would he tell me? Would he refer to the same vocabulary and notions that were present in the Jewish society of his times, or would he tell me something else, something similar to Paul when he spoke at the Areopagus? And well, I'm still thinking, and believe me, and if I will have any conclusive idea, I will write you.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know.
I think this is part of I would say a Christian reading of this verse. So in this from this point of view,
Yeah.
yes. But if we trying to hear Kohelet, I think he saw the life of a human here on the earth only. Yes, and and this is a part of his dramatizing and controversial thesis
Right.
in his book, the notion of end of human life, and
Yeah.
in this 12:7, I think he gathered this idea from Genesis, yeah, where we have a human, we have a dust, we have afar, and we have a breath of God, nishmat chaim, or
Yeah.
ruach from God. But okay, in next stages of interpretation, maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Um,
Thank you. Do we have another question?
yeah. Now let me also mention that some of the parts I went through very fast, desiring to leave us some time for questions, quite detailedly discussed in my paper.
Mhm. Some remarks, other observations, some questions? If not, at this point, we can end our session.
Thank you.
90
Thank
minutes
you very
of
much.
work. Thank you for all your presentations. Thank you also for the participation at this meeting. And I would like to remind you only that the next session, the fourth session, will start at 5 p.m. So we have still half an hour to rest a little. So at this point, thank you very much,
Thank
and
you.
we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.